Hey everybody, welcome to Michigan Out of Doors. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Well, we have a brand new show, but it is a little different this week. Now, we still are going to have some good hunting and fishing action from around the state. In fact, we're going to do some pan fishing and learn about a new live bait that's out there, if you can believe that. But we are going to sit down with Russ Mason, the chief of the Wildlife Division, because a couple of weeks ago, chronic wasting disease was discovered in our free-ranging deer herd. So we spent some time with Russ, did a little sit-down interview, and kind of learn more about that disease and how it's going to affect deer hunting here in the state of Michigan. So if you're a deer hunter, you're going to want to watch this week's show, and if you're a fisherman, you will as well. Make sure you stay tuned. Lots of good stuff on this week's show. I'm Jimmy Gretzinger, and it's time for Michigan Out of Doors.
From the first spring rains to the soft summer breeze, dancing on the pine forest floor, the autumn colors catch your eyes. Here come the crystal winter skies. It's Michigan, Michigan out of doors. Someday our children all will see this is their finest legacy, the wonder and the love of Michigan. As the wind comes whispering through the trees, the sweet smell of nature's in the air. From the Great Lakes to the quiet stream, shining like a sportsman's dream, it's the love of Michigan we all share.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by Greenstone Farm Credit Services, making recreational land ownership possible across Michigan and northeast Wisconsin. Begin your land financing journey at one of Greenstone's 37 locations or visit greenstonefcs.com. By Vanguard, a global manufacturer based in Michigan featuring rifle scopes, binoculars, and spotting scopes with lifetime warranties. Vanguard supplies sporting optics and accessories for the outdoor enthusiast, online at vanguardworld.com. By Country Smokehouse, offering a variety of meat products. Country Smokehouse is located 3 miles south of I-69 on M53, just south of Imlay City. Country Smokehouse is a meat processor, a butcher, and a destination for sportsmen.
We all have one, that perfect spot, a special place we go to smooth out the ripples of the day. Our perfect spot is calling. Our perfect spot is Pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
Hi, I'm Jordan Brown, and for this week's show, I was down in southern Michigan doing a little pan fishing with an angler using a pretty unique bait.
Jordan, we're here on Swains Lake in Jackson County. It's got a lot of good bluegills in it, and we're actually here to show you a new live bait that Chad Miller has developed. They're called Maggies, and they're a lot like a mousey, only they're bigger, tougher, and we really want to show the people how many fish you can catch on one. And they no heat problem with them. You can lay them on the deck so you don't have to put them in coolers. And you can freeze them. They'll still come back to life. But the whole thing is they're really, really tough. And you'll be surprised at how many fish you can catch on one of these compared to any other live bait that's on the market.
He's on there. Uh-oh. He's pulling drag right now. Look at, I caught a fish, all right. Hey, that's not common, for me to get one before a skeeter. What are we doing?
Chad has been trying to perfect the process of raising these Maggies for over a decade, and it all got started with trying to raise the more commonly known mousies all the way back in 2003.
My whole life I've been around mousies, and I realized back in 2003 that it wasn't going to be long and mousies were going to be non-existent, kind of like corn borers are in some regards, just because of loss of habitat. So back in 2003, I started working on trying to raise mousies, similar to a lot of other baits that are out there. And after about 3 years of that, I just decided to give up on trying to raise mousies. And instead, I happened across this other fellow that we've been fishing with today that I eventually termed Maggie or Maggies, which is just really a mashed together word for mega and mousies. And so we created the name Maggies out of that. And Maggies are just they're a fly in the wild that There's mousies and then there's meggies, and they're two different complete species, similar to, say, a beagle and a St. Bernard or something. You know, they're different sizes, different critters altogether. And what a meggie is it's a larva with a tail, an aquatic larva. It needs that tail to send up into through the water to breathe. And so meggies are the adolescent version of the adult, which is a fly.
There's a keeper. Looks like probably another male. I love it catching the males. I don't keep the females. I always throw them back, but I love catching these. Another just a good eating bluegill. That's a beautiful color out of here. Pretty eyes too.
The morning bite was pretty slow, but as the water warmed up, so did the fishing. And as we began to catch more and more fish, it became clear just how tough this bait is.
Another one of them males, carbon copies. Look at the color. See the blue hues in him? Definitely got the right name, don't they?
One of the big advantages behind meggies is their versatility with catching different kinds of fish, but they're tough times too, really. They're tough on the hook. You can catch multiple fish with meggies, but they can take quite a range of temperatures from hot to cold. We've had them freeze solid, and half an hour later brought them out and they started crawling around. On the other hand, the ones we had on the boat today were well over 100 degrees inside the container, and they're still moving around now. So they've got quite a bit of temperature range that they can handle. I'd like to think that the shelf life is a month or better. We've had some people that have held on to them, you know, just at normal temperatures for 4 months. But you know, if you can get this bait and take it home and bring it out the next time you go fishing a couple weeks later, you know, that's a big value to people.
Although these meggies can be found in the wild, there's very few people that have been able to figure out how to raise them in captivity, and Chad is the only one that we know of that's offering them to fishermen. He plans on having them ready to hit the shelves this fall.
It's a female.
Meggies are really becoming first available to fishermen through my development with them. You know, there's no doubt that people have found them in the wild, but no one has really ever taken an effort to try to raise them. And after 9 years of trying to work on it, I feel like I've finally got a process going here that can make mass production hopefully by this fall. And so they're not available anywhere else in the country because I've developed a process to raise them in mass numbers.
Another eater. Nice eating bluegill. Perfect eating size, Jordan. I love catching big ones, but I want to eat little ones, smaller ones. He's not little. Look at the shoulders on him. He's kind of built like me, ain't he, Jordan? You think? About wide and short, huh? You see the resemblance? Yeah, he is pretty though. I'm kind of pretty too, though, don't you think, Chad? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So's a bluegill.
It's not very often that there's a big change in the world of live bait, but the toughness of these meggies will be like no live bait anglers have used before. Special thanks to Chad and Skeeter for inviting me out for a great day on the water here in southern Michigan.
Well, if you are a deer hunter here in the great state of Michigan, CWD are 3 letters that you really never want to hear: chronic wasting disease. It was discovered here in our state a few weeks back, and so we thought we'd spend some time with Russ Mason, the chief of the Wildlife Division, to find out more about chronic wasting disease and how it's going to affect us as Michigan hunters. Well, we are here today with Russ Mason, head guru of the, what's your official title? Chief of Wildlife?
Chief of the Wildlife Division.
Okay, so you've had a few things going on over the last few weeks. Let's just start with CWD, chronic wasting disease. What happened here in Michigan a few weeks back or whenever that was? Just kind of, for the person that's not too familiar with the disease, just give us a What happened and what is CWD?
Okay, well, you know, we have been very concerned about CWD coming to the state of Michigan, and we knew it was more a matter of when and not if, because I think we're the 23rd state in the nation. There are two Canadian provinces that have CWD, either in a captive facility or in free range. But we weren't expecting to see it where we did, frankly. We've done lots of surveillance, you know, tens of thousands of deer and elk and moose have been examined over the last 15 years or so. This index case comes up in Hazlitt, Michigan. Essentially, it's another first for Michigan, the first urban CWD case. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, why would that be? What we know is that the deer is a local. We have the genetics on the individual, this index case, and we know that the genetics are the same as a Meridian Township deer. As it turns out, there are a couple of studies that some of the folks at MSU were doing looking at the genetics of family groups of deer in those natural areas in Meridian Township. So we knew we had the genetic library, and so we were able to match that one in. So we know that this animal didn't wander in from someplace else. We know that it wasn't a release, a captive that was on a facility somewhere and got away. We know it's a local deer. The other thing we know about it is it was pregnant with 2 buck fawns, so at least one other deer was exposed. This disease takes a long time to express. You know, it could be months, more likely years, multiple years for the disease to express. And so I truly hope that we don't see additional cases, but we are likely to, I think, in my estimation, see additional ones. And what does that mean? Well, it means a couple of things. First, it means immediate inconvenience and economic loss to everybody involved. It means that hunters will be inconvenienced. It means that local businesses that make a little extra in the fall, catering to deer hunters, may be inconvenienced. It means probably that some hunters will be scared from hunting deer if they're pretty casual about it. It's important to note, by the way, CWD is a TSC, a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. It's like mad cow disease or some of the human variants. However, CWD, there's no evidence anywhere that it's transmissible to humans.
Gotcha.
In fact, there's no evidence anywhere that it's transmissible to anything other than deer, elk, or moose. So it's very particular, I guess, in its host. The long-term piece of this is troubling. If we have established CWD in no place in this country or in Canada where CWD has been established, has it been eradicated, it just slowly spreads.
Okay.
And it takes decades to spread, very slowly. The ultimate result of that is probably a reduction in the deer herd in Michigan. And disturbingly for deer hunters, that reduction is concentrated in the older age classes, particularly in bucks. You know, the disease was first identified, described in 1967 in Colorado. And just now, you know, 40 years later, are they beginning to see declines in the overall size and structure of herds in Colorado and in southeastern Wyoming.
Okay,
which
so
is
it hasn't,
right across the board.
hasn't wiped out the population in any of those other 23
No,
states.
and in fact, because of the high reproductive rate of deer in southern Michigan, very unlikely to have a massive impact on deer numbers in southern Michigan because even fawns can reproduce in their first year. I mean, we have a high enough nutritional plane that that's not uncommon here. And because the disease takes multiple years to express, it's more than likely that any reduction in population that we see here in southern Michigan is very slow. But it's more likely that a lot of those deer aren't going to get old because they're going to die before they hit those old age classes, and bucks are more likely to have the disease than does.
Okay.
The way it transmits itself is as follows, what we understand. First off, prions, that's the vector for the disease agent. You can think of it a lot more like nuclear waste than an actual disease. Prions, you can't freeze them, you can't burn them, you can't kill them with bleach. They get into the soil and actually become more infective in soil than they are on an animal, and they stay there, as far as we can tell, forever.
So this could have come in 5-6 years ago on a mule deer buck that somebody brought in from Colorado, throw the carcass in the back 40, and there you have it.
It could have. It could have done
that.
that. I'll give you another one that's another possibility. You know, a lot of bow hunters use urine as an attractant. There's nothing certified about those urine samples. A lot of them are collected from captive herds.
Okay.
In states with regulations that are less strict than Michigan, it's entirely possible that some of those urine samples are infected. How
Gotcha.
much does it take to produce an infection? I don't know. How many cigarettes does it take to cause lung cancer?
Right.
Probably more than few, but I don't know the answer to those questions.
So the effect for this season, we're going to see a 3-county area that will be kind of the zone that you're going to be targeting as far as trying to get all those deer registered. Is that the plan?
There's a tiered response. So within 2 miles, basically, of this index case, we are on the move now, right now. I will
Okay.
have sharpshooters out removing deer wherever we can get at them, so that
Okay.
we are picking up every single roadkill and put on additional personnel to accomplish that. This fall, then, within 10 miles, anybody will have reduced license costs. I should mention, by the way, that disease control permits are available now for anybody within that 10-mile radius.
Okay.
Disease control permits will be available within that radius throughout the hunting season. That's another way of saying that for those who think this is just some scheme of the DNR, basically what I've done is vacated my revenue stream for 10 miles.
Wow. So those are available now.
We want deer, we want them right now, within 10 miles. And the way we describe our 10 miles is, I think it's 9 townships.
Okay.
You can go onto the website and find out if you're in one of those townships. Also within that 9 townships, we'll be picking up every roadkill. We're doing that now, by the way, but this
Okay.
fall. And we want every deer checked. So if a hunter goes out this fall and takes a deer, mandatory check. This is a big deal because when we had the CWD case in a privately owned cervid operation several years ago, our compliance rate with deer check was somewhere less than 50%. This is a big deal, folks. You move those carcasses outside, and as you pointed out, well, a lot of guys, what are they going to do with the carcass? I don't know, let's drag it out and dump it in the field after we've harvested it. What harm, I just got it 10 miles away, you very well could be spreading CWD because deer investigate those carcasses. Do not do that. Check your deer. We'll get back to you very quickly. So we'll get back to you in 2 or 3 days, tell you whether or not that carcass
Gotcha.
is hot. If it's hot, we strongly recommend that you dispose of it and don't eat it. There's no evidence that it transmits to people.
But just to be safe.
But don't do that.
Yeah. And so they would be able to keep the meat, whether hunting
Absolutely.
season or in this.
Absolutely, and you
Okay.
can keep the skull cap, and you can keep the hide. What we don't want are any of that. We don't want the head. We don't want any neural material getting out there.
Okay.
It's a central nervous system disease, but it can invade the peripheral nervous system as well. So we don't want spines. We don't want heads. We don't want any of that stuff out there.
Okay.
We want folks to pay attention and have deboned meat and to dispose of those carcasses properly in landfills
Okay.
or deep burial.
So this is a long-term issue. Obviously, you're going to be here in the state of Michigan. What, in your estimation, kind of two questions. What would be an overreaction by the department, and what would be not doing enough? I mean,
Well-
I think some guys out there, they're just going to wipe out the whole deer herd. I know that's not what you want to do. But what would be an overreaction, and what would be not doing enough?
I think we've scaled this so that it's a very appropriate reaction. Very intensive surveillance within 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Getting every deer checked within 10 miles in those 9 townships. And then in the 3 counties, the Shiawassee, Clinton, and Ingham counties, no baiting and no feeding. We know that it's contaminated soil that can transmit the disease, as well as animal-to-animal contact, urine, feces. Deer that look perfectly healthy that have CWD can, in fact, distribute more prions than deer that look sick, and they dump them out for years onto the landscape. So we don't want to congregate deer any more than we have to. That's an appropriate response. You recall last time we had the baiting and feeding ban for the entire Lower Peninsula.
Yeah, that
which-
was the initial plan, wasn't
which
it?
in our view it was excessive, not because it wasn't bad biosecurity. I continue to, to anybody that will listen, very few people do, that baiting and feeding is a bad idea. That's, I am your physician when it comes to deer. If you come to me and say, should I smoke? The answer is no. Well, what about filtered cigarettes? I said no. Suppose it's just 5 filtered cigarettes. No, it's a bad idea. Don't do that. Likewise, for baiting or for feeding, these are activities that are likely to transmit diseases. Having said that, we understand the strong cultural preferences of people in Michigan. And while we encourage them not to do things, we are not making them not. And so this 3-county piece seems very appropriate because this is the place that is most likely to be impacted. Now, having said that, if we find additional cases, we will once again drop a pin where that index case is. The new case, draw a 2-mile, a 10-mile, and 3 more counties. This index case is about 11.5 miles from Eaton County and about 11.1 miles from Livingston County. So it would not take much for this area to expand, and I am hoping that it does not. And doing everything that I can in a very appropriate, targeted way to see what we've got going here without trying to upset anybody else's traditions. It's very important to me and to the department and to the state of Michigan that our deer hunting traditions and culture are maintained.
When it comes to EHD, Russ, where are we with that, and has that affected how you're managing deer?
Certainly it's affected what we did. In the past, you recall, we dropped the antlers, the opportunity to buy antlers permits from 10 to 5 as a response to this. EHD is an interesting disease. It's actually less troubling than others because it kills quickly, and it depends on warm weather and drought to produce it. In other words, it's a biting midge that is the vector that moves the disease around. That's what we had a couple of years ago. We had that very dry, hot summer. Deer were concentrated in areas where there are a lot of these biting midges, and as a consequence, we saw localized declines that were very significant, along the Maple River corridor and Ionia County and some other places. The problem with managing for that is if you were a deer and lived 2 miles away from one of those hot spots, you weren't affected at all. So you could have deer that were as abundant as they ever were 2 miles away from a place that no longer has any deer at all. And so you can't really manage down to that level. What we have done is use this unfortunate situation as an opportunity to look at recovery. So, and this is of interest, I think, to private landowners as well. We developed a site ability model. Guys are always asking me, how many deer do I have? I don't know how many deer you have. We do trend analysis. We developed a siteability model now in partnership with Boone and Crockett Professorship at MSU. So guys could actually guesstimate to a fair degree of accuracy how many deer they do have on their property. The reason we want it is I want to know how fast deer recover in these CWD zones.
That's what I was going to ask. What have you seen, for a farm that was hit pretty hard, and is that a 2-year, 5-year? When do they see a fairly significant rebound?
We thought we were looking at a 5 to 8 year recovery span, but that's from the south, and it may be a little faster than that. I mean, what we've seen is fairly encouraging. I don't think you'll get that if you talk to the guys along the Maple River corridor per se, but we are seeing some recovery, and so we'll know a lot more about how that actually occurs. It also is helping us with our CWD response because we're using that siteability index to figure out how many deer we actually have in the area within that 2-mile piece. The number could be very large, as high as 55 or 60 deer per square mile, which is a lot of deer, actually. A lot is actually the wrong word. Too many deer would be another way of looking at that.
Okay. So you would still say that to the southern Michigan land, or, well, northern Michigan. Do you still feel that we have too many deer in the state of Michigan?
I don't think we have too many deer in the state of Michigan. I think that if you look at our southwest region, we've seen it trending down over the last decade. When I say trending, looking at automobile, deer collisions, hunter-harvest successive variety of, it's not dramatic, but there's this gradual coming down. And I suspect that deals with the reason for that, or reasons, are hard.
Well, special thanks to Russ Mason for sitting down with us and giving us some good information on both chronic wasting disease and EHD. Now, we did ask him a few other questions while we were there as well. So coming over the next few weeks, we'll be hearing from him about the UP deer herd, and really was no hunting an option that was on the table for this year when it comes to our Upper Peninsula hunters. We also talked about wolves in the Upper Peninsula, and we actually proposed the 1 buck rule to him, and you can get his thoughts on that. So that'll be coming over the next few weeks, as well as lots of good hunting and fishing action. We're up in the Upper Peninsula right now in the Cedarville-Hessel area, getting some stories up there, so those will be coming over the next few weeks. Lots of good trout fishing still to be had, so lots of good stuff happening right now in the state of Michigan. Make sure you are getting out there and enjoying it, and if we don't see you in the woods or on the water, hopefully we'll see you right back here next week on your PBS station.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by By the Michigan chapters of Safari Club International. For over 40 years, SCI has been protecting hunters' rights and promoting wildlife conservation here in Michigan and around the world. SCI chapter locations can be found on the web at firstformichigan.org. By Pictured Rocks Boat Cruises of Munising, exploring Lake Superior's Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore with its sandstone cliffs, caves, waterfalls, and lighthouses. Pictured Rocks Boat Cruises on the web at picturedrocks.com. By Propane, Clean American Energy. Propane retailers promote the safe use of Michigan-produced gas energy in homes, farms, and businesses across our great state. Learn more at usemichiganpropane.com. By the Department of Natural Resources Fisheries Division, reminding fishermen that they are our first line of defense in stopping aquatic invasive species. To minimize the risk of invasives, it is required by law to properly dispose of live bait after your fishing trip. By doing so, you help protect Michigan's world-class fishery. Closed captioning is provided by the Michigan Propane Gas Association. Clean American Energy. Propane realtors promote the safe use of Michigan-produced gas to outdoor enthusiasts across our great state.
When I wander far away, a dream stays with me night and day. It's the road that leads to my home state. I am a Michigan man. Changing seasons paint the scene like rainbow trout in a hidden stream. The white-tailed deer in the tall pine trees. I am a Michigan man. I am a Michigan man. Ask where I'm from and I'll show you my hands. Lord above, I love this land. I am a Michigan man. From the Keweenaw down to St. Joe, Kalamazoo, East to Monroe, to St. Marie and back again. I am a Michigan